All right, chapter 8.5 is going to teach us a simple process that depends on your ability to play with words and follow the process with discipline. Variation functions are functions that revolve around what we call a constant of variation, k. The trick with variation functions is to set up the general formula based on keywords, plug in the values, and pretty much that gives you the variation function. And then once you have that, everything else will fall into place. So the three keywords you need to make sure you understand and you need to write down, and I'd write these down, the words and the function, because it teaches you kind of how to translate a little bit, is that A varies directly with B, which means that you would put A equals K times B. M varies inversely with N, which means you would put M equals K over N. And then you have T varies jointly with U and V, which means that T would be K equal to K times U times V. So again, directly means multiply, inversely means divide, jointly means multiply K by whatever both of the things that are over there. All right. So notice that the only repeated variable here is K. You'll base your general formula on the wording of the problem. After that, you'll substitute values to find K. For example, in this, you'd substitute A and B. You would solve to get K by itself. Or here, you would multiply to get K by itself. Or here, you would divide by U and V to get K by itself. But once you find K, you would create the general function and then go from there. Again, it sounds complex, but it's really pretty straightforward once you understand the general idea of what you're doing. Before we get started, it's important to understand how direct and inverse variation, inverse or indirect variation is illustrated in real life. If you had y equals k times x, regardless of what the constant is, as x is, let's say the constant is 5. If x is 1, then y will be 5. If x is 2, then y would be 10. If x is 10, then y would be 50. So as x gets higher, y gets higher. If you're dividing a constant by a number, as you're dividing by a higher number, as we learned with reciprocal functions, the higher this number gets, the lower this number gets. So whenever it's inverse variation, as x increases, y decreases. So if you were looking at something like study time and grade, you would ask yourself, what happens to your grade as your study time increases? Well, typically, the more you study, the higher your grade's going to be, so that would be a direct variation. Well, what about playtime and, let's say, go back to my kid days, playtime and completion of chores. The more you play, the less you complete your chores, which means that this would be a inverse variation. So again, the more you study, the higher your grade gets, which means all you have to do is ask yourself, as the main one goes up, what's going to happen to the other one? If the other one grows with it, it's a direct variation. Again, ask yourself, what happens when my playtime increases? How is it going to affect my number of chores? If the more I play, the fewer chores I do, then that is an inverse variation. So again, that's the general idea of what you're looking at. So let's just get to it and see what happens. Remember, here's the key idea. We use the words to create our general formula. We plug in what we have to find K. We then use the variation function, which has K already figured out, to finish it off. This is like the one where you had the, I think it was AE to the KT, where we had to find K and then plug K back in. It's similar to that, but like I said, it's not bad. It's just, something you have to kind of practice, and once you do a few times, it'll be fine. The profit P selling lawnmowers is directly proportional to N. So I would just put P equals KN. It says if the profit from selling 10 lawnmowers is $450, so profit is 10. The profit from selling 10 lawnmowers is $450, so 10 lawnmowers would be N, 450 would be the profit, so you would put 450 equals K times 10. You would then divide by 10 to, of course, get 45 equals K, and so therefore your general formula would be P equals 45N. Why? Because K is 45. It's kind of like the Y equals MX plus B work you did. So again, varies directly. They gave me the profit for a certain situation selling 10 lawnmowers, which means that K has to be 45 in that situation. Now they say determine the profit from selling 20 lawnmowers. So they give me 20 lawnmowers, which is the number. So you simply plug in 20, 45 times 20, which I believe is 900. And so, yes, you might think to yourself that's common sense, but it's not always direct like that. It's not always numbers that make sense, but that is the general idea. All right, so just make sure as you work through these that you try to follow that process, because, again, it is helpful. Write your formula, plug in what you have, find K. Once you find K, plug it into the general formula to get your variation function. Plug in what they give you, finish off the problem. That is all. All right. The volume of gas, V, varies inversely as its pressure, P. Again, that's your statement. So volume varies inversely as its pressure, P. So V equals K over P. It says if the volume V is 160 cubic centimeters when the pressure is 200, so that's volume, which is 160. When the pressure is 200, they want to find something else. But again, they gave me the volume and the pressure in one situation, so we're going to use that to find K. Of course, that means we multiply by 200, which gives me 32,000. Then they want the volume when the pressure is 20. I'm sorry, we need the formula first. So V equals 32,000 over P. So there is our general formula. And again, from there we can use that to answer any question that pops up. So find the volume when the pressure is 20 millimeters. So again, pressure 20 millimeters. So we would put V equals 32,000 over 20. I think we can do this in our heads using the cancellation property of zeros, trailing zeros, which means 3,200 divided by 2, which I believe is 1,600. I think. Yeah. So that would be your volume. So again, looking at that, that is the general idea of what you're doing. That's all it comes down to. Some of these are going to ask you for the general formula. Just make sure you adjust the way you type the general formula based off of the answer. If you have too many issues, let me know. Just email me and I'll try to help you out. The volume V of a pyramid varies jointly as the area of its base B and its height H. If the volume of a pyramid is 48 cubic meters when the area of its base is 24 square meters and its height is 6 meters, find the volume, blah, 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 blah. First, you have to find generate the formula. So volume V varies jointly as the area of its base B and its height H. So that's that part. Then you have to find a situation where everything has been defined. And that is from here. So it says the volume is 48. Leave our K. When its area is 24 and its height is 6. So now we have to use algebra to solve. 24 times 6 is 120 plus 24, which is 144. I think that's right. Yes. Volume is 48. Area is 24. Height is 6. That is 144. So then we divide by 144 to get that's 1/3. I'll just leave it as 1/3. And so my general formula is V equals 1/3 BH. All right. Now it says find the volume when the area is 27 and its height. So we have the area and we have the height. So we would put V equals 1/3 times 27 times 5. Now, I don't know if you know about the rules of multiplication, but typically whenever there's a fraction, because it's multiplication, you could actually multiply in any order. But what I usually do when there's a fraction is I multiply or divide this number into whatever it can go into. So for example, if I had 1/5 times 6 times 10, the first thing I would do to make this easy is say 5 goes into 10. Remember the multiplication we learned where you can cancel out the 5, turn 10 into a 2, which means this is now gone. Now you just do 6 times 2, which is 12. And just to prove it, here is your 1/5 times 6 times 10, which is 12. So again, Usually whenever I see a fraction in a group like that, I usually cancel. So 1/3, 3 actually goes into 27, so 1/3 of 27 is 9, which means that the volume should be 45 altogether. So again, that kind of helps you out. Hopefully you can use that somewhere, but I know it popped up for me a few times, especially whenever you deal with volume formulas and all that stuff. But again, not a tough topic. Just make sure you practice it. The hardest part is reading these. Intelligent IQ or intelligent quotient or IQ varies directly as a person's mental age and inversely as a person's chronological age. A person with mental age of 14, chronological age of 30 has an IQ of 112. So let's see. This is a double part because it gives me two different words. So it says IQ varies directly as the mental age, and they don't give me a variable, so I'm going to put M for mental and C for chronological. Use whatever you want, but again, it says it varies directly as a person's mental age, so KM, and inversely as a person's chronological age, which means divide by C. All right, so again, you can do both. If it says it varies directly as something, that means put it with K at the top. If it says it varies inversely with something, put it at the bottom, but that's it. Now we have the situation. A person with a mental age of 14, chronological age of 30 has an IQ of 112. So 112 equals K times mental age of 14, chronological, I guess I always say it messed up, 30. There we go. And so to solve this, the first thing we're going to do is, the first thing I would do is multiply by 30. Somehow or another, I just don't know how to push buttons this morning. 3360. And then divide by 14. Let me check that again. 112 times 30 equals, divided by 14 equals 240. Making sure I did that right. Mental age of 14, chronological age of 30, IQ of 112. Okay, so therefore we have our IQ general formula, which is 240M over C. So it says, what is the chronological age of a person with a mental age of 20 and an IQ of 120? Notice they give us different things here. So IQ is 120 here, equals 240. It says mental age of 20, and it doesn't give us the chronological age, so we want C. So algebraically, here's what we have. C is on the bottom, and we've never really had to solve for C on the bottom, but here's what I usually think about. If I want to get rid of something on the bottom, don't we usually multiply by that value? And so when we multiply that, we end up 120C equals whatever 240 times 20 is, which would be 48 with 2 zeros. But again, what we just did, whenever you have a variable on the bottom, if you multiply by that variable, it actually moves to the top of the other side. So 120C equals this. Now we can divide by 120. Which is 40. There you go. Again, patience. Write the formula, plug in what you have, find K. That gives you the variation equation. Once you have the variation equation, go back, plug in what you know, and go from there. You drive from home to school at an average speed of 33 miles per hour. The drive took 28 minutes. If the drive home took 50 minutes and used the same route, in reverse, what was your average speed? Now here's the thing. Your speed is different. Your time is different, but the route is the same. And anytime you have a constant like that, that means you're looking at a variation equation. Now here's what you have to do now. You have to ask yourself, looking at speed and time, which is our factors, if I drive faster, would my time increase or decrease? And to me, if I drive faster, my time would decrease because, of course, I would get there fast, which means that this is an inverse situation. So I would put speed equals K over time. At least I would set it up that way. I don't know. Let's see if it works. With that, we now have to find K. So it says you drove from home to school at a speed of this, and it took that long. So again, your speed was 33 33 miles per hour equals K over your time was 28 minutes. So now we solve it by multiplying by 28, meaning my constant of variation is 924. So my general formula, my variation function, is S equals 924 over time. So it says if the drive home took 50 minutes, you use the same route in reverse. They want the average speed. So therefore it took 50 minutes, so put 50 in for time. So S equals 924 over 50. And you get the answer of 18.48. Or 18.5. And let's just ask yourselves, because again, the good thing about these is that they are realistic. Does this make sense? If I drove 33 miles per hour and it took 28 minutes, 18 miles per hour is almost half that. And notice that 50 is almost double 28. So it does make sense, because if I sped up, or I'm sorry, if I slowed down by half, then I should have drove twice the amount of time. Again, the relationship kind of keeps it intact. Again, focus on that stuff. Again, send your emails of questions that you have so I can try to help you out, but just don't forget to send me your work. And remember that the general idea is make the formula, find K, create your variation formula, then plug in what you have to find what you're looking for. Outside of that, good luck, and I will talk to you later.